Hello and welcome everybody into the Lunar panel, as we call it, the post game show here on Fox Sports Arizona's Facebook page, the Sun Solar Panel YouTube page, and wherever you listen to podcasts. We're glad to have you along with us. I'm Greg Esposito, your host. Ahoy, hoy. Alongside, as always, the Silver Fox, and he's only silver because he finishes second all the time on this show. It's Dave King.
Hey, that's better than third, like you. I guess I'm ahead of you.
Hey, well, I'm the Chris Paul of this team. I do whatever it takes to actually make this thing work. So,
then what am I then? What am I?
We welcome the other book, the Carmel Thunder from down under.
That's right.
Saul Bookman, the star of the show. Saul, how are you today?
Good. How's it going, guys?
Good. Hey, good.
Outside of the fact that every Arizona team lost today, it's not such a bad day.
Beat LA was not a factual statement today in Arizona. But you know what? Honestly, though, when I watched the first half of this game as the Suns fall to the Clippers 112-107, watching this first half of the game, I had PTSD back to the days where I did the post-game radio show for this team and had to explain 30, 40-point losses. But then I remembered, wait, this is not your son's sons. This is actually Monty Williams, Chris Paul's team here, and they fought back hard in that second half, down 31 in the first half, fell behind in large part because of a 23-0 run that the Clippers went on, and Paul George basically scoring everything that he could. I have not.
This was the PG night.
Oh, it was just crazy. There's not been a Paul and a George with that many hits and so few misses since the Beatles. All right, that's just McCartney and Harrison were the last time a Paul and George had that.
You just rambled that whole intro until you could get to something that good, and then you're just like, okay, now I'll hand it off.
No, I just had to make a joke Dave understood because we usually have to explain that stuff.
Oh, here
Paul
we go.
McCartney. Whoa.
Here we go.
But look,
yeah,
guys,
he's got to go at us. It's not a show if he doesn't go at us.
Let's look at this, though. We're looking at that first half, obviously a bit downtrodden. Second half, the Suns storm back. They actually cut the lead to 1 in that fourth quarter, but cannot pull off the comeback. It would have been the largest comeback in Suns history. They wind up losing by 5. What were your overall impressions of this game? Dave, we'll start with you.
Robert Christie just put in the chat something that makes sense to me, and that's what I was thinking as well, which is the good news is it was a winnable game even with PG going off and making every shot, Nick Batum hitting everything he threw up there, and Luke Kennard having his probably best stretch of the young season as well for the Clippers. And the Suns still got within 1 point in the second half. Cam Johnson, he made 1-3 all game. Mikal Bridges didn't make anything. And the Suns still found a way to get back into that game and almost pull it out. I was pretty happy with that outcome. Man, just a week ago, the Clippers lost by 50 on a Sunday to the Dallas Mavericks. And now today, I mean, obviously they're not a 50-point loser team. They're a good team. They're going to be at the top of the Western Conference and one of the top 3 seeds. And I really think it's a great sign that the Suns stayed right there and could have won this game anyway.
I actually think that somebody just pointed this out in the chat. It was the 2 back-to-back threes by Serge Ibaka that I felt like really kind of gave Dave hitting the sauce early. All right.
Not early.
Really gave the Clippers a little bit more confidence to hold on to that lead as opposed to just falling apart, because they were falling apart. And it wasn't like, they were playing terribly when the Suns were making their run. It's just the Suns were playing pretty good. I mean, think about how many shots that the Suns missed, especially from 3-point range. I mean, Cam Johnson, I think, had a straight of 6 straight misses from 3-point range. And to his credit, he just kept shooting, which is what he's supposed to do. And I'm totally fine with that. You're going to have those games. I just love the fact that this team bounced back. So, and they did it in a way that it didn't feel fluky. Like somebody didn't have to get incredibly hot for them to come back. They just did it as a team. They played hard. They played solid defense. They played better as a team. They stopped turning the ball over. They had 10 turnovers in the first quarter, and everything kind of settled down. And I think this team just solidified that they are a top 4 team in the West, despite the fact that they were down by 31.
Look,
that's my big takeaway.
we knew the rubber band was going to snap back on the shooting. They weren't going to shoot, out of their minds as they had early in the season from deep. They finished 10 of 33, 30%, a little over 30% for the game. But Saul, I think you're completely right. What impressed me was they didn't get back in this game doing anything out of character. They got back in this game by playing the way that they have won all season. Moving the ball, sharing that, getting to the basket, and really a big part of this comeback came from the center position with both DeAndre Ayton and Dario Saric making hoops down low for this team. And especially in that third quarter, they finished the second quarter and the third quarter on a combined, I believe it was 29-8 run to end both of those quarters, which was huge momentum swing, both going into halftime and then going into that fourth quarter. I think they just ran out of energy there. There was a stretch where I believe it was 6 minutes they didn't hit a field goal in the fourth quarter, and I think they just had to expend so much energy to get back from being down 31 that they just fell a little bit short. But I think you're right, Saul. They proved they can compete with anybody in the West. Maybe not named the Lakers, but they can compete with pretty much anybody. And that's why I'm not too disheartened by a loss to the Clippers. You thought Lakers, Clippers are probably 1-2, but then everybody else is in the mix from 3 on, and the Suns taking care of business against those teams that'll be in that mix and held their own against the Clippers.
Here's a question, okay? So I was thinking about this yesterday. The Lakers faced the Heat in the NBA Finals last year. When you compare us to the Heat and what the Heat had from top to bottom, you can't sit there and say that the Suns are so far off the Heat. If anything, you might say that they're a little bit better than the Heat from top to bottom because of their depth. So if the Heat can compete with the Lakers, I think that the Suns could win a game or two if there was like a 7-game, series or something like that. So I don't think it's such a foregone conclusion that the Lakers are far and above so much better than the Suns, but I
think the Suns can do better than win just a game or two. So against the Lakers in a 7-game series, I hear what you're saying, Saul. I do think the Suns are better than the Heat. But look, the Heat play, and it's very similar to the Suns, right? The Heat play with effort. They're constant movement, constant ball movement, body movement. What the Suns were not doing when they got down by 31 is moving. They were just standing around and hoping things would fall to them. And I think it's just incredible to see that they were able to turn it around mid-game. There you go, transitive property champion.
Yes, I did, Ralph. Thank
you. No, I think the Suns realized, and they started playing their game again in the second quarter, and that made a huge difference, obviously, on the scoreboard, and they came back. It does take a ton of effort to get back into, right there with the score. And so just like the same reason Denver couldn't keep it up and win on Friday is the reason the Suns lost today. You can't get down so far in the first half and hope to make it all the way back and then win out.
Yeah, and look, I wasn't saying that the Lakers, that the Suns can't compete with the Lakers. I'm simply saying,
no, I understand that.
In terms of being a 1 seed in the West is kind of what I was getting.
For sure. I will say this too: the Clippers got the doors blasted off of them last week and did not bounce back. The Suns had the doors blasted off of them in the first quarter and did bounce back. That's a big difference between these two teams, in my opinion.
Clippers were down 77-27 at halftime, and they just let it happen.
And also, I think there's something to this playoff P thing, or as some people call him, pandemic P, where he just goes missing. Because I think that Paul George, as we saw after that little fisticuff there in the middle of the fourth quarter, people can get into his head, and he was shook for a little while, for about the next couple minutes. So, hey. I'm not such a fan of the Clippers in terms of my confidence in them being like one of the better teams in the West consistently.
Well, let's we can't say what Devin Booker said to Paul George on this show, but thank you for the Suns and Fox Sports Arizona cameras for picking it up, because it was quite entertaining. If you didn't catch it, go back and watch the clip. You can find
it's on our Twitter feed.
Yeah, you can find it on the Fox Sports Arizona Twitter feed. It's funny. What the Suns team can't overcome is Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges, and Cam Johnson shooting a combined 6 of 24 for what is that, 13 for 21 points. That's what they can't overcome. They need at least 2 of those 3 to have decent games to play. And I've been saying it since the beginning of the season. I think this team goes as far as Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson shooting can help take them. They didn't shoot well tonight. Suns fell in a big hole, and they fall a little bit short. I think that's a big part of what happened in this game.
Another big part of that is DA. I think we finally saw a fourth quarter from DA where he was aggressive. He attacked the boards, came up with some huge rebounds and putbacks. And that's when you were like, oh, there it is. There it is. That's what we've been waiting for, and him getting a little hyped up down low in the paint and realizing that he's starting to figure it out a little bit. If you haven't noticed, he's keeping that ball up high. He's being a little bit more aggressive. He's not second guessing himself as much as we go along in the season. I think it's only going to get better.
Yeah, Ayton definitely kept the ball high for sure, and I really like that because he got a lot of mismatches under the basket because the Clippers were switching everything, and the only little guy out there most of the time was you got either Patrick Beverly or Reggie Jackson. That's it. Otherwise, they're all 6'7", 6'10" guys. I mean, with Nick Batum. Jesus, when did Nick Batum come back to life? I thought he was not only out of the league, I thought he was dead. He was in Charlotte, and you go to die there. So I don't know where he came from. All of a sudden, it was like the young Nick Batum made every shot, played good defense, has incredible length out there on the guarding that 3-point line. The Clippers are a good team. They don't have. I'm waiting for Kawhi Leonard to show his MVP level form for them to actually win in the playoffs and in the finals. That's what they're going to require because none of their other guys have that.
I don't know how to react to you go to North Carolina to die. I actually have an uncle that moved there recently, and that just is a little unsettling. This is what you get on the Lunar panel. Dave just tells you what states if you're you shouldn't move to is what you get here. But look,
hey,
closing out.
Cheers. This is COVID times, man. Everyone, no matter where you are.
Look, closing out on 3-point shooters was a big part of the fourth quarter problems. Batum, you had the Serge Ibaka shots. Those were the difference makers. Those 9 points were really what did the Suns in. And both the Ibaka shots and the Batum shot were fairly wide open. They were nice passes, but I think it was just the Suns got a little tired, didn't close out the way they had aggressively in terms of shooters. And when you're playing a team like the Clippers, and you can debate whether they'll do it in the playoffs or not, but in the regular season, they're one of the elite teams in the West. You just can't have those lapses, especially when you spot them a 31-point lead. That was the difference here. But, this could have been a very different night. Dave, you said before we came on here that we would have been talking a lot of people off the ledge if this had played out the way it looked in the first half. And I thought it was going to be a group therapy session, but really it showed you what this team's made of. There's no doubt in my mind. And when you look at it, we talked about DeAndre Ayton. It finishes with 24 points, 8 rebounds of 9 of 12 shooting. He got the line as well, which people were complaining about earlier in the season that he wasn't. Dario Saric, another impressive game for him at that backup center position, 15 points, 4 rebounds on 6 of 9 shooting. It was the little things from those guys that really helped him, and was very impressed by the effort. You got to wonder what Monty Williams said at halftime, because they came out a different team in that second half.
Well, we don't know what he said at halftime, but we know what he said after the game. So we'll go ahead and run that.
Our team is resilient. They fight. All the stuff that, a city like ours can be proud of. And then when it came down the stretch, I thought the 2 threes that Serge hit really put us in a bit of a bind. I don't think he had scored until that point. And then he hit 2 big threes. And we still had a chance to tie it up. Got a decent look off. But it just didn't work out for us. But I just love the way we scrap and battle, And we know we can beat that team because we've done it before. We just got to get off to a better start than we did.
Yeah, I mean,
just don't get down by 31.
Basically,
let's see what happens.
You know, and Devin Booker's free throw shooting has continued to be befuddling. He was 1 of 3 again tonight. He's struggled early on in the season, and the little things just they add up sometimes, and tonight that was the case. They only shoot. I wish we could say only. They shot 82% from the free throw line.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as it seemed. It really seemed a lot worse.
No,
than, 23 of 28 from the line. It feels like all the important free throws they were splitting them.
And they won the battle to get to the line too. They had 28 free throws to the Clippers 19, which is something you want to see as well. Hate
Bailey Lions. Yeah, this is thank you for calling Espo out.
Exactly.
You're the reason the Suns lost, Espo. Thanks, because he flipped it over.
For those listening on the podcast, Bailey says one of her flaming ballers is hate at Espo for pointing out Monty's mask situation. Didn't think anything of it. Now it's all I think about. You're welcome. It's been driving me nuts. So
back to Booker for a second. Yes, he missed a couple of what looked like more free throws, right? But he was 10 of 12 from the free throw line. He had 8 assists to only 2 turnovers tonight. I think we need to give Book some credit. And he had only 2 personal fouls. One of those
he also had a
very big one.
2 phenomenal blockouts against bigs down low on the block that saved a couple rebounds and gave the Suns an opportunity to keep their run going, which I thought those are the small things that people don't see on box scores, because he didn't even get those 2 rebounds, but because of his blocking out, he was able to free up his teammates to get those rebounds.
Correct. And I misspoke. I said he was 1 of 3 from free throws. He was 1 of 3 from behind the arc, 10 of 12 from free throws.
Column. You got to look at your back score clearly.
Yes, so I was looking at the wrong column because I am reading a very, very tiny screen.
Obviously, Espo had one of these earlier, and it's now hitting him.
No, I just have old man eyes and can't read it off the screen that I'm looking at. So
Booker was a plus 14 in this game. Look at this. Plus 14 in this game in 45 minutes. It's only a 48-minute game. Holy shit, right?
He played a lot.
They were minus 21 in the 3 minutes he sat. Yes, because the Clippers went on that 23-0 run.
Well, and the thing, Booker took it over in that 4th. I mean, he noticed, okay, guys are starting to drag a little bit. I'm gonna take it on. I'm gonna turn it on, and he got to the basket at will there for a while in that 4th, and that's what you want to see. It's the maturation process of Devin Booker. I think it was Eddie Johnson on the broadcast saying that's how you know this guy's becoming a true star, because he's not forcing it. He's turning it on when he needs to and recognizing those situations. He did that tonight.
And he's still not where he's going to be. He's still not really, he hasn't hit his offensive stride in the season, in my opinion. He hasn't had that game where you just know almost every shot's going in. He hasn't had the Paul George game. Let's just say it like that, where Paul George just threw up everything tonight and it went in. He hasn't had that game, and he's still averaging over 25. Like, the dude is just the best player on the team, hands down, and just one of the best players in the NBA. It's not even close.
Well, and one thing we haven't talked about yet that I think actually wound up being a bit of a factor was Chris Paul takes that charge on Paul George. Paul George decides to do the cup check on him, the not of the Mitch variety, but of the other variety. And Paul George has to go to the locker room at that point. I don't know why. I don't particularly want to know why, but he looked like he was in pain and he was grabbing a region.
You can't tell by the way he walks. He always walks like he just got hit in the nuts.
Well,
you can't really tell.
I was trying to put that delicate.
Dave, you just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna just say it like it is."
This is a late night show, man.
Man, it's not R-rated. Jeez, man, come on.
He could have said that
R-rated now. Wow.
He got hit in the nether regions, went to the locker room, was off.
He got hit in the down below.
It's he has kids already. All right.
Yeah. So it amounted to off the court for about 4 minutes, and I think that also cost them. That was part of their dry spell that they had as well. So a lot of factors that go into this. Biggest takeaway for each of you from tonight's game: the 112-107 loss to the Clippers.
My biggest takeaway is that the Suns are one of the best teams in the NBA. That's my biggest takeaway. I think they can compete with anybody, and on any given night they can win. I think that from top to bottom, they have more depth than I would say at least 90% of the league. That's what I'm impressed with the most. That comeback doesn't happen unless you have depth, because you can't just rely on Devin Booker or Chris Paul or DeAndre Ayton or whoever you want to say. It's a team effort. Jay Crowder hit a couple big threes. And even though Cam Johnson didn't hit, he hit a bucket every now and then to kind of, keep the Clippers honest. And Mikal Bridges defensively, I just think that this team is they're fun to watch. You don't lose complete confidence in them. And I'm excited to watch this team play.
Dave, before we get to your takeaway, I gotta bring up a few of the comments from the chat. Blaze Megatron says he got hit in his Carmel Thunder down under. I would agree.
And then you gotta do the Buck Dog one.
Buck Dog says he got hit in the stimmy, which is a flashback to Saturday's show. So thank you, gentlemen, for putting it more delicately again. Yes, Dave, what was your biggest takeaway tonight?
My biggest takeaway is that the team did not let up. The team let up in the first quarter. They were standing around. They were flat-footed. They were straight-legged. They weren't going after anything. They got themselves down by 31 points, and then they didn't let the rest of the game go. They actually came all the way back, and they fought, and they didn't have to make 10 straight threes. They didn't have to do all the pretty stuff really well. They just slogged it out, and they fought and they fought and they fought and they fought and they got back within one. And then all of a sudden it was Serge Ibaka deciding he's a 3-point. He is a good 3-point shooter these days, but he hadn't taken a shot most of the game. And then all of a sudden he hits back-to-back ones. That shit happens. And then that stuff happens.
Man.
And then Paul George just, made a couple of more shots, and
you know what? We're just gonna cancel Dave for the rest of the day. Maybe we get every time he curses, we just put him in like a 5-second timeout and then bring him back to make sure that he's kind of recalibrated.
Oh my God! Our new swear jar is like a penalty box. We're going half hockey here.
I lose 1% of the $0 revenue for every time I do that. Yeah.
All right.
Dave, can we put him back in the penalty box for that as well? Look, my takeaway, Mike Tyson has a great quote that he says, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the mouth, right? The Suns got punched in the mouth hard in that first quarter, and they didn't go away from their plan. And their plan got them back in this game, and it should give them the confidence that play your game, play within your strengths, and things will be all right this season. And that's what I like to see, because this could have been the kind of thing that shakes confidence. I think it was the kind of loss that last year's team would have absorbed and gone on a 5-game losing streak, and it would have shook them. Not this year. This is not the way this team is gonna react, and they still sit at 5-2 after that game. So it is. I just don't foresee any issue out of it. That's what I liked about it. So we're gonna shift gears a little bit here and talk about the other major story that happened this weekend from the Suns, and it was the passing of Suns legend Paul Westphal, Ring of Honor member, one of the only people involved in both the 1976 Western Conference championship and finals run, as well as the 92-93 Western Conference championship and finals run. He was player, obviously, with those Cinderella Suns teams with the Purple Gang from Phoenix. He was the head coach. He passed away on Saturday due to his battle with brain cancer. I got to tell you, I have a couple of Paul Westphal stories I'll share, and the first one was actually from when I was a kid. Paul and I shared a birthday. Obviously, years difference, but we both were born on November 30th, and as a kid you gravitate to those little things that you have in common with people that you look up to. And I remember in 92, that 92-93 season, I sent a letter to Paul Westphal and the Suns, and just saying to Paul, hey, we share a birthday. I love basketball, yada, yada, the things kids write. And I never really expected a response. Well, I got a nice letter and an autographed basketball card back from Paul Westphal. And that struck me, as he didn't have to do anything. And he took the time to actually do that. And that was kind of my first experience with him. And obviously, we all saw those great moments with him. I didn't see a lot as a player because I was too young. Dave can speak to that a little bit more. I don't mean that rudely. I just mean you.
No, he was before my time too. I'm sad to say.
Okay. Well, we all saw the guarantee, all those things, but then I got a chance to actually interview him while working with the team for a kind of a mini audio documentary that we did on that guarantee. And, I spent a good 10 minutes talking with him, and, you always hear, oh, these guys are really great, but Paul Westphal had a way of kind of making you feel like you were a friend with him, even if you had just met him. He just had this calming presence about him. And I remember asking him, well, did you have any of that guarantee speech kind of planned out in your head before you go in that press conference? And he just starts laughing. He goes, Greg, I didn't have that plan because I expected to win game 2, and but it was just like this really genuine moment. And I won't forget that. Paul Westphal had a way of just making you feel like you actually knew him, whether you did or didn't. And that, I found that to be quite impressive. Dave, do you have any particular memories of Paul Westphal as well?
Yeah, I think it might come up in the tribute video. I'm not really sure, but I absolutely loved him talking through the Barkley off the backboard for the win play that he'd actually designed in the timeout. It looked like a broken play. He had Oliver Miller throw it from midcourt off the backboard, had Ced Ceballos fake the catch and not touch the ball. And then the ball went off the backboard and Barkley caught it on the rebound and put it in. And I love how the last line of the video is there's 2 minutes him describing this play drawn up. And the last line of it was, that's the only play Charles ever ran right.
Well, and the crazy thing about that is he knew the rule. Everybody else is like, well, once it hits the backboard, this game's over. It was a game against Portland late in that 92-93 year. And Paul goes, no, the rule says until somebody touches the ball, the clock does not start. So said, fake it, do not touch the ball. Charles will catch it and he'll shoot it. And he did, and he made it, and they win this crazy game. And I talked to Chuck about it, and I remember him talking about how his mind was blown that Paul knew that. And in 76, he did a similar thing in the finals. In that triple overtime game, the shot heard around the world, Westphal goes, if we call a timeout here, it'll, we don't have a timeout, but it'll give them it'll give the Celtics a technical shot, but it'll allow us to advance the ball.
Take a shot, right?
To be able to take a shot. Yeah. So without that, we never get one of the greatest shots in NBA history with Gar Heard hitting that shot heard around the world. Paul Westphal was such a cerebral player to go along with his God-given talent that it made it truly special, and it's why it made that transition to coaching so natural for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Saul, please.
I never met him. Unfortunately, he was one of those. He's one of those revered Suns legends that just happened to slip through the cracks, and I never got to meet him. But for whatever everybody's told me, the one thing that is always stuck out is that he's just a genuine person and a gentleman. And I think all these tributes. I know Tom Leander is very close to him, and that's the one thing that keeps getting echoed is that he's just a very good human being. And I think when you come across those types of people in life, you don't forget them, because it's so it's because of the way they carry themselves. They set themselves apart. Like in sports, who the phenomenal athletes are from the regular athletes, right? You got your LeBrons and your Jordans. And I think in life, you also have those types of people that have that impact and can separate themselves from everybody else. They don't fall into what I call the BS of everyday life. They have a certain perspective on how to carry themselves and how they want to influence others. And they go about doing that in a very efficient way. And I think Paul Westphal was definitely one of those people. It's sad that he's gone, but he again, when you go, you want to know that you left something behind, right? You had an impact in this very short time on this earth, and he definitely did that for thousands of people.
Yeah, and including his family, a big time family man. And there's just not enough that you can say about Paul Westphal and his impact. And that's why we have a tribute video that Fox Sports Arizona put together that we'd like to show you now.
There's no ultimate victory in sports. My parents taught me that when they taught me about the true nature of life. In fact, my mother thought she often thought this, that I was acting too big for my britches, and she'd go to one of my games and root for the other team. And that really happened a lot. I eventually got the message that real life and our eternal destiny, it's much more important than basketball.
I know the next question is, are you guys dead? No, we're going to win the series because we're a better team than the Lakers and we will win.
I know I'm not larger than life. One person congratulating me for being selected said, "Hey, now you're immortal." No. Immortality doesn't come from basketball.
And I agree with what he says, but he'll never be forgotten because of basketball, but the person he was around the game as well. Mm-hmm. Basketball opened that door for us to get to know him, but the fact that he was such a good human being is why many of us won't forget him. Tom Leander, as you brought up, Saul, watched Paul on the court, and he talked about it on Suns Live tonight about how important Paul Westphal was to him becoming a fan of basketball and a Suns fan. But then he got to know Paul as well and put together one of my favorite sports documentaries on that Cinderella Suns team. And if you guys get a chance to watch that, you get to hear from Paul and all those guys that played with him in that 75-76 season. And you'll get a real understanding for Paul Westphal, the player, or if you get a chance to read Joe Gilmartin's book, the little team that could and darn near did, another great book where you get to learn about Paul, or another great way you can learn about Paul Westphal, the player, and his impact on turning this into what I still believe is a Phoenix Suns town. So, thank you to Fox Sports Arizona for putting together that great tribute video. I think later this week on our podcast feed, I may also put up an old podcast that I did with John Bloom of the Suns, where we actually did that audio kind of look back at that guarantee that Paul Westphal had, with clips from Paul Westphal, Barkley, Marley, Chambers. There's a bunch of guys in there that I think you guys would find interesting as well. So.
There's also a big tribute that the Suns production team put together. You can find it on our Facebook page, or on Twitter and Facebook, and the Suns actually also put it on their pages as well, so you can take a look. It's a far longer one. It talks about the timeout that you guys mentioned, and talking about the guarantee, and also talks about the Hall of Fame. And again, Paul Westphal is just one of those people, man, that hearing the news yesterday, it's unfortunately it wasn't too shocking, but it still hits you because of how much of an impact he had to so many other people, which in result, impacts you. And I just think it's one of those things that, you got to respect what he did, You got to understand who he is, and you got to learn about him. And because he obviously affected a lot of people, and you want to know why. And I think once you understand why, you come to appreciate him a lot more.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, no, he's like one of the nicest guys that you'd ever meet. And really, the Suns franchise has had a lot of the nicest guys you'd ever meet, people associated with the franchise. You've got Steve Nash, you've got Cotton Fitzsimmons, you've got obviously Paul Westphal, Jeff Hornacek, guys like that. I know I'm missing some. But, Monty Williams also, he went and saw Paul Westphal recently, and the Suns shared some feedback from Paul Westphal's wife that Monty went out of his way to give a care package to her for how to deal with all this and to help with that, because Monty's dealt with loss himself too. And that's real genuine from Monty to go and do that, and not just to do the token handshake to a guy he's never met before, but actually spend some time with Paul Westphal and his wife and really get to know them a little bit before he passed. I'm just proud to be a fan of this franchise because of such nice people that are associated with it, including Paul Westphal.
Agreed. So rest in peace, Paul.
Alvin Adams is another incredibly nice guy. Yeah.
Agreed. And condolences to the Westphal family. We all feel for you. There's no easy way to transition from that, so I'm not even going to attempt to, but we've got a few days of rest for this Phoenix Suns team, well earned after the stretch of games that they've just gone through, and a tough loss this evening. But when we look forward to the schedule, we've got the Raptors coming up on Wednesday in Phoenix, a 7:00 tip on Fox Sports, Arizona. And, the Raptors have disappointed. They're 1-4 so far. They seem like a team reeling and trying to find what their identity is right now. And the Suns, if there were ever a bounce back opportunity after a tough loss, you've got that Raptors game Wednesday, and then followed up with a 1-5 team in the Detroit Pistons in Detroit on Friday.
The return of Josh Jackson.
Well, no, it's not here. It's in Detroit. So
shoot.
They'll be seeing Josh Jackson, 5 p.m. tip time on Fox Sports Arizona. When you look at that, gentlemen, do you feel pretty confident that when we talk again on Saturday morning that this team will be sitting at 7-2?
I'm going to go 6-3. For some reason, look, the Suns have played some tough opponents all the way from preseason through the regular season, because they had 2 each against the Jazz and the Lakers preseason, and they haven't had an easy, quote unquote, easy game yet. So I am a little worried about that Pistons game, actually more so than the Raptors game. So I'd say they split them.
You think they're going to lose to Detroit in Detroit?
I don't know. I mean, teams have bad nights. I mean, shoot, Portland just lost to Golden State tonight. Yeah, it took 62 from Steph, but I mean, Portland was trying to look good.
I mean, who's going to drop 62 off from the Pistons?
No, I'm just saying things can happen. And yes, I'm very impressed with how the Suns came back tonight after coming out flat. And that should say, but every team loses some easy games. That's all. I'm going to predict 6-3.
I'm just going to go ahead and say any team that has Josh Jackson on it isn't winning anything. So they're not going to win against the Suns. And I think that they could win 2 in a row. I'm 75% confident they will. You never know in the NBA, to your point, you never know. So I don't like to guarantee, but I feel fairly confident that they will be 7-2.
In honor of Paul Westphal, I will guarantee 2-0.
They're going to win on Wednesday. They're going to win on Friday.
And everybody will say what a great 2-game stretch it was.
No, I don't think anybody's going to say that after being a 1-4 and a 1-5 team. Okay.
But look, you've got to pencil. How does Dave forget? You got to pencil Friday in as Langston Galloway revenge night.
That's
Detroit,
true. That's
right?
true. The Langston game.
Langston's
That's another guy who missed his shots tonight too, by the way.
Langston's going to have 24 points in 2 minutes in Detroit.
And really, now that I think about it, Josh is not going to go off on the Suns. Josh is going to take 20 shots and he's going to make about 4 of them.
Josh isn't even going to play 20 minutes. What are you talking about?
No, yeah, he's starting for them. Yeah.
Oh,
so he's not doing too bad. He's not doing too bad. I can't wait to see him on Friday.
Dave knows that they're starting Josh Jackson and still says the Detroit Pistons are going to beat the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, okay. The Pistons beat the Suns last year too. With Derrick Rose is still on that team. Somehow he's going to go for 35.
Hold on.
Stuff happens.
I should not have said that because I feel a Saturday morning video coming up making fun of me for saying that to Dave this evening.
This is true, Herbie, by the way. It's like I'm Ross and Friends, and I've gotten tanned 8 times in the front of my face just so I can have some color back.
Yeah, Herbie, one of our flaming followers, says as the season progresses, Saul's color gets better and better. So I don't know about that. I mean, maybe a little bit, but so yeah, I don't. And I don't care. Maybe I can regret this if need be, but I think this Suns team is in a much better headspace than last year's team. They're not going to overlook anybody. They're going to go in and they're going to take care of business. And even on a night like tonight, where they struggle shooting in some respects, even early on, they still close a giant gap. I have a great deal of faith that they'll pull off these 2 games against Detroit and the Raptors coming up this week.
Yeah, well, I mean, apparently we have a lot of Josh Jackson fans in the chat right now. So
no, we have a lot of PTSD.
I haven't watched the Pistons game since they were in the NBA Finals. Like, why would I take the time to watch the Pistons now? Like,
we have expect the worst Suns fans is what we have, and just like me, we're thinking it's going to go bad this week.
Did any of you watch the old Mad TV show? It was like a knockoff Saturday Night Live that Fox used to have. It was they had this fake. It was
Friday, wasn't it?
I don't.
It was Friday night. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But they had a sketch that was a dating service called Lowered Expectations, right? And that's what I think everybody has with Josh Jackson. Yeah. They're like, he's playing well, and it's like he's not.
Fabio.
He's not wetting his shorts, so he's playing well.
Fabio in the chat says Josh Jackson has some history of not showing up to Suns events. So
I don't think James Jones will be buying the Detroit Piston fans.
Wouldn't that be great if he carried some 6-packs of beer around to the fans in the stand?
Blaze, my man, saying Josh Jackson's going to drop 40. LOL.
Yeah, 40 shots maybe.
He'll drop 40. The rest of the Pistons will have 25. They'll win 104-65. I'm all right with that. Man. You know, like let's
Jinx.
Come on.
All right.
God, ye of little faith. You guys just want to just look at this and go, you know what? I've been beaten down far too much by being an Arizona sports fan. I think that is probably a good place to wrap up this Lunar Panel post-game show on a night where the Clippers beat the Suns 112-107. Thank you to our friends at Fox Sports Arizona for the highlights and the wonderful Paul Westphal tribute video. Thank you to all the Flaming Ballers in the chat joining us for this not quite as late post game show as the last time we did this, but late enough on a Sunday night. We appreciate you guys being with us as always. Just a reminder, hit join on the YouTube page, become a member of the Flaming Ballers. Also hit that like button on the Fox Sports Arizona Facebook page. And if you are listening on the podcast, please give us a 5-star review. We'll try to read it. And I actually want to read a comment. It came from Facebook. It wasn't a 5-star review, but I'll treat it as if it was one. Net Speed said, look, I'm a Clips fan in Philly, but which I don't know how you become a Clippers fan in Philly, but I'm not even going to get into that. But you guys have been uploading really great content. Found you guys because no one would do an Insta reaction to the Suns in the bubble except for you guys. The way you guys talk about the game is refreshing. So thank you so much for listening. That is what I'm going to call a 5-star review. So please leave those if you are listening via podcast. So for the Silver Fox, Dave King, that you can find on Twitter at Dave King NBA. The NBA is there because, well, he finished second place and he needs to up his ego somehow. For the Carmel Thunder down under, Saul underscore Bookman. The underscore is there because, well, the lighting on Saul, the Bookman doesn't want to have anything to do with it, so it has to have that space between.
See how that changed in one
He
day.
lost it.
See how that
Better
changed in just one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm at
yeah, so-
Espo on Twitter. You can find
And
the
that's
show
all that matters.
at Sun Solar Panel as well. Make sure to follow all the Fox Sports Arizona social channels for all the great content that you can find throughout the week, not just about the Suns, but about anything in Arizona sports. So for Dave, for Saul, I'm Greg Esposito. Thanks for listening to the Sun Solar Panel here on YouTube and Facebook. We'll talk to you next time. Ahoy, hoy.